U.S. President Donald Trump has followed through on his tariff threats. He has signed an order to levy 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Canada and the United States, a trade war between close allies. The long-standing trade partnership between Canada and the United States, once considered one of the most stable and significant economic relationships in the world, is now facing a serious crisis. Recent tariff measures imposed by the Trump administration on Canadian steel and automobiles, followed by Canada's swift and massive retaliatory tariffs, have escalated tensions between the two nations. Major industries, particularly the automotive and energy sectors, are now at the center of this growing trade conflict. As of March 4th, Canada has implemented a 25% tariff on 30 billion Canadian dollars worth of American goods in its first wave of retaliatory measures. However, if the situation remains unchanged, a second wave of tariffs, amounting to a staggering 125 billion Canadian dollars, will be imposed within 21 days. This second round of retaliation is not only significant in terms of its scale, but also its target approach, affecting key industries such as automotive, energy, oil, electricity, gas, steel, and aluminum. The impact on major American brands. This trade dispute raises a critical question. How will leading American automotive brands like Tesla, Ford, and GMC cope with these new barriers in the Canadian market? The upcoming tariffs will impose an additional 25% duty on vehicles and electric cars imported from the United States. Given the deeply interconnected nature of North American supply chains, these measures will disrupt production, raise costs, and affect sales. For instance, popular models like the Chevrolet Silverado and GMC Sierra, vehicles assembled on both sides of the border, will see a significant increase in cost due to these tariffs. Currently, Canada and Mexico produce around 5.3 million light vehicles annually, with nearly 70% destined for the U.S. market. The imposition of these tariffs threatens to destabilize this delicate economic balance, ultimately impacting manufacturers, workers, and consumers on both sides. Origins of the trade conflict. The trade dispute began when the United States introduced a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, along with an additional 10% duty on energy exports. The Trump administration justified these measures by citing national security concerns, including the need to curb illegal immigration and prevent the influx of banned substances. However, many analysts believe these tariffs are driven more by economic strategy than security concerns. Canada responded swiftly, with then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau imposing an initial 25% tariff on 30 billion Canadian dollars worth of American goods. This included a wide range of products, from steel and aluminum to consumer goods. Trudeau also announced a second wave of retaliatory tariffs worth 125 billion Canadian dollars, set to take effect in 3 weeks if the United States did not reverse its tariff policies. A change in leadership marked Carney's approach. As tensions escalated, Canada witnessed a change in leadership. Mark Carney, who recently took over as Prime Minister, has maintained a firm stance on trade retaliation. In his first public statements, he made it clear that Canada would not lift its countermeasures unless the United States demonstrated respect for its trade relationship. During a recent visit to London, Carney accused U.S. leaders of being disrespectful and unwilling to engage in meaningful dialogue. Unlike his predecessor, he appears determined to take a measured and strategic approach rather than rushing to negotiate under pressure. Carney has also indicated that while he may maintain Trudeau's tariffs, he is cautious about further escalation. However, if the U.S. does not withdraw its tariffs, Carney has signaled that Canada is fully prepared to proceed with the second round of retaliatory measures. The expanding scope of retaliation beyond the automotive sector, Canada's response extends into other critical industries. The province of Ontario, for example, has introduced an energy-related countermeasure. Premier Doug Ford has imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity supplied to U.S. states, warning that if the trade war escalates, Ontario could even cut off electricity exports entirely. This move has sparked concern in Washington, with White House officials cautioning Canada about the potential consequences of such actions. The effects of this trade war are already visible in financial markets. The Canadian dollar has depreciated, stock prices have declined, and the S&P/TSX Composite Index has dropped by 1.5%. The Bank of Canada has warned that if the situation continues to deteriorate, the country's economy could shrink by 3% over the next 2 years. The economic and political consequences. For years, trade between Canada and the United States has supported millions of jobs and facilitated the exchange of goods worth over $2.5 billion every day. However, the imposition of tariffs threatens to disrupt this vital economic relationship. In response to the U.S. tariffs, Canada has not only imposed financial penalties, but has also launched an advertising campaign in 12 American states. The goal is to make American citizens aware of the economic consequences of the trade war, particularly in key electoral battlegrounds like Florida, Nevada, and Georgia. Billboards in these states highlight the impact of Canada's retaliatory tariffs, sending a clear message ahead of the U.S. elections in November. Canada's strategy for economic resilience. Recognizing the risks posed by prolonged trade tensions, Prime Minister Carney has introduced a series of economic measures to strengthen Canada's domestic economy. These include encouraging consumers to shift away from American goods and support domestic producers, providing $450 million Canadian dollars in support for small and medium-sized businesses, offering tax deferrals to companies affected by the trade war, investing in major infrastructure projects, including transportation, energy, and trade corridors, expanding Canada's trade relationships with Asia-Pacific nations such as Japan, Australia, and Vietnam through the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. The road ahead, cooperation or prolonged conflict. As this trade war unfolds, both nations face critical decisions. If economic damage intensifies, both governments may be forced to reconsider their tariff policies. A possible renegotiation of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, could also be on the table. For Canada, strengthening alternative trade partnerships will be essential to reducing dependence on the U.S. market. Meanwhile, American businesses and consumers will feel the impact of rising costs and supply chain disruptions. The coming months will be crucial in determining whether Canada and the United States can find common ground, or if their economic paths will continue to diverge. Trade wars are never just about tariffs. They affect entire economies, investment flows, and global markets. While major companies like Tesla, Ford, and GMC brace for losses, Canada's push for economic independence may redefine its long-term trade strategy. Will Washington reconsider its stance in the face of Canada's resilience? Or are both economies headed toward prolonged uncertainty? The answers to these questions will shape North America's economic future. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for further updates.